Okay, so we can go ahead and get started. Welcome to College Insights episode 3. This episode is focused on the transition from high school to college. I'm Dia. I'm a senior at Milton High School, and I'm also the vice president of Milton Viva Youth and a co-founder. And I'm going to be your moderator today. And then I'll let our 3 panelists introduce themselves.
How you guys doing today? My name is Vivan Shandilia. I am a first year marketing major, more specifically business administration, and I have a minor in entrepreneurship and innovation. And I used to be a part of VIBA in high school, so I'm excited to speak with you guys today.
Hi everyone, my name is Kaya. I'm a second year industrial engineering major at Georgia Tech. Kind of still deciding on my minor, so TBD on that, but I'm excited to be here today.
Hey guys, I'm Shri. I'm a first year computer science major at Georgia Tech, and I'm excited to be here with you guys.
So these are the 5 main topics that we're going to be covering today. And afterwards, we're going to have a Q&A where we have some pre-submitted questions that we took earlier. And then if you guys have any questions, you can put them in the chat or message them directly to me. The first one is decision outcomes. Then we have time management, stress management, managing course load, and speaking to college advisors.
All right, so when it comes to type of decision outcomes, there's obviously various different outcomes. The first one being accepted, and that's as clear as it says. You've been accepted into the university, and this university is going to feel that you're a strong fit. And even though you are accepted, it's very important to make sure you follow through with the next steps. You'll be sent various materials, which will be physical and digital, and it can be anything from just setting up your meal plan, figuring out your housing, figuring out like different specifications to your major. So it's important to stay on track with that because you never want to get behind. Um, you can get denied, and unfortunately, the university was unsure if you would be a good fit. But contrary to popular belief, like when most students get denied, it's not because like they're lacking as a student or like they didn't have something that was like that didn't look good on their resume. It's just due to various reasons. This can be space. This can just be they feel like you need more time. You might be better as a transfer student, which I'll get into later on. But yeah, there's various things that go into that. And then deferred. The university is clearly still considering you as an applicant, but they would like to know more about you. And we'll also get into more steps on how you can show the university, why you deserve to be on their campus, because that's your number one goal as a deferred student. And when you are waitlisted, you are considered a qualified candidate by the university, but the university is unsure if they have space for you as a student, whether it be on their program, housing, just campus in general. So, yeah, waitlisted will most likely, like 9 times out of 10, also have specific steps and specific reasons for why you were waitlisted. So, it's important to pay attention to that. And conditional. So conditional varies by the university, and this is acceptance with an additional requirement. And just kind of like waitlisted, this is going to be very specific to the university. You'll be told clearly, and yeah, that's pretty much it when it comes to decision outcomes. So steps you can take for as a deferred student. So a lot of you guys might not know, but I've been deferred like several times when applying to schools. I got deferred when applying to UGA, which is one of my top choices. I got deferred when applying to like gosh, there's so many, but like I've been deferred so many times, so I can speak on this for hours. But it's very important to look through all the materials that were given to you, or that are available online by the respective university, prior to contacting them about the next steps. And this is a very important thing because you do not want to just email the counselor, email like someone within the university when a question has already been answered on that website, because that's going to look bad on your part that you did not take the research or the time out to use what they have already given you, and they're paying attention to that. So that's very important too. um you're definitely going to want to contact the university with any questions you may have about being deferred. Definitely do this after looking through any materials that were sent to you, going through any blogs. So do your research first. Um, and after you do these 2 steps, it's important to show why you deserve to be on their campus. Send any updated grades, achievements, and possibly a continued letter of interest. And ask if you can be interviewed on why you'd be a great addition to the university. just keep some caution when it comes to the interview or the continued letter of interest, because some universities will actually like explicitly write on their website that they do not accept letters of continued interest or they do not take interviews. So if it does say that on their website or it says that anywhere on a Reddit blog, etc., related to the university, it might just not be the best option to email about that when it's already been listed previously. But again, an interview is a great way to show off your like your social skills, any hard and soft skills, and it can just be a great booster for you to try and get into a university. Um, and lastly, it's important to remember to double check on the policies and requests of the university. I know I've said it like 5 different times just now, but I've seen it happen to students when like they have missed out a step, and it can just cost you in the long run. And it's just important to stay on track with everything. And yeah, that's about it for deferred students.
Okay, so for placement tests, a lot of intro classes in college can be skipped through AP or dual enrollment credits, depending on the class. So a lot of intro class like AP psychology, intro to biology, intro to English, a lot of the super generalized classes you can bypass if you get a high enough score. Now, this varies by college. Some colleges only accept a few AP tests, some colleges accept all of them, and some colleges have a score cutoff. So for example, Georgia Tech takes 4s and 5s for most tests, but for some specifically like Physics C, they only take 5s. So just to you just want to check on each course, sorry, you just want to check on each college's policy because it varies from college to college. But one thing I would like you guys to keep in mind is even if you did take the AP class and you did get a qualifying score, if you felt that you weren't prepared enough when you took the AP exam and that you just got lucky, I would advise you to just retake it, especially if it's a class that's important for your major. So I feel like if you're a biology major or a neuroscience major or something like that, and you took AP Bio in your freshman year and you got a 4 or a 5, so you get credit, but you took it all the way in freshman year, which means you might have forgotten a lot of the core concepts that are going to show up again later on if you skip intro to bio. So that would be a case where you want to retake the class. But once again, this is on a case by case basis, it's entirely subjective. And another thing that some colleges offer is the colleges themselves offer a placement test. And this could be for classes that AP doesn't offer tests for, or for classes that are a bit higher than the intro classes. So for example, for some math classes and CS classes at Georgia Tech, they offer a placement test at the start of the semester. And if you do well enough on it, you get to just skip the class and go on to the next course in that sequence. And once again, this also varies school by school, but these are typically offered near the start of each semester, and you can get more info by looking at the college's departments page or emailing a college counselor at that college about this information. Okay, time management. So time management in college is much more crucial than in high school. You have much more free time, much more independence, and at the end of the day, it's ultimately you who's responsible since you're going to be living by yourself. So it's you who's responsible for planning out your day, making the time to do specific things, and balancing your time well in college. So a general rule of thumb to keep is whenever you're signing up for college classes, they have a label that shows how many credit hours it is. So some classes might have 2, some might have 3, some might have 4. This just depends on the rigor of the class. So for example, if you take a class that has 3 credit hours, a reasonable estimate to give to studying would just be to multiply that by 2. So spend 6 hours a week studying for a 3-hour credit class. And obviously this depends on the class itself too, as with everything. If it's a particularly difficult class, it might be more. If it's an exam week, it might end up being more. And if it's just a week where you're not really doing anything, you might not have to do any studying at all. So once again, this also varies week to week, class to class. And it's almost required to use a timetable or a calendar to keep track of all this, because every day there's a million different things going on. If you're not using a calendar, it's going to be extremely complicated and tedious to just memorize all the different things you have to do. So I would highly advise keeping a calendar. I didn't use a calendar at all in high school, but in college, I found it extremely helpful and valuable. And as for classes themselves, a lot of classes have, especially now due to COVID, have non-required attendance. A lot of them post lectures online, they record them. I would say unless you're feeling sick or unless you're worried about COVID, I would go to class in person whenever possible. I just say this because you have a higher level of interaction with the professor and your TA. If you go in person, you can ask better questions. You can probably understand the material better. Now, I'm not saying you can't do any of this by attending online. It's just me personally. I learn better by going to in person, but if you learn better online, you can still attend virtual lectures if your professors have those available. I just think it's important to not skip class because it just sets a bad habit. And eventually, it's going to catch up to you when it's time for a test or a major assignment is due. I would have a consistent sleep schedule. I think this is very important, getting a healthy amount of hours of sleep per day. Even if it is a midterm week and you end up having to stay extremely late, I would make that more of an exception than the norm. I think it's important to sleep at a consistent time and wake up at the same time almost every day just to set a good habit. It's good for your health. It'll help you focus better during the day and it'll help you retain information better. And finally, just do not procrastinate. Everything stacks up in college. So if you miss an assignment, or I mean, not miss, if you just keep putting an assignment off, other things will pile up on top of it. And it'll just add to your stress the longer you put it off and the longer you keep not doing something. And here is an example schedule. This is my schedule for this semester. And as you see, it's pretty weird. I have classes after 12:30 every day. I have no morning classes and I have no classes on Friday. So this is just to show how modular the schedules are in college compared to high school. Like high school, you had these set time blocks, 7 periods a day, 5 days a week. You had to select your classes to fit within those times and the school rearranged it so it fit. In college, it's not really like that at all. Each class has its own time. Some of them could be an hour and a half long. Some of them could be 3 hours long. Some of them could be 50 minutes long. It depends on the course. And then the course could be at specific times. Now, you do see that these courses do all occupy the same block of time, 12:30 to 1:45, 3:30 to 4:45. So it is kind of similar in that aspect, but it is different in that there's much less classes per day than in high school. Like I only have 2 classes on Monday, 3 on Tuesday, 4 on Wednesday and Thursday. So the reason for that is because the college classes are much more rigorous and in-depth than high school. So you usually only take 4 to 5 classes a semester in college compared to the 7 or 8 you would usually do in high school. And then the R classes, the one on Wednesday right here, this 2050 R, these are recitation classes, which are almost like help review sessions where the TAs, the teacher's assistants, they go over material for you. And I think it's really important to attend these, especially for help on homework, preparing for tests, and especially if you're in a STEM class, these are extremely helpful. And finally, scheduling classes varies from school to school, but it is typically important to note the time that registration opens specifically for you and to just make a note of that on your calendar as an alarm. And as soon as it's time, you need to sign up because there's thousands of people at university and the spots for these classes fill up extremely fast. Okay, so differences in course load. College classes are usually less lenient for late work. I know a lot of teachers in high school like to say that all classes in college never have late penalties. Uh, they're all gonna automatically give you a 0 if you turn stuff in late. And this definitely is the case for some classes. However, in my experience, most of my classes have had some form of a late penalty, but this is just anecdotal. It depends from class to class and person to person. But the late penalties I have had are usually more strict than the ones in high school. It's usually like you can turn it in 1 or 2 days late for like a significant penalty, and then after that, it's just a 0. And then some of my other classes just straight up, if you turn it in late, it's a 0. Maybe one assignment out of the semester will allow you to turn in late. Like it's definitely from course to course. The professors set it, even for the same class, different professors might have different expectations with that. The courses are usually much more based off a textbook, especially for the intro level classes. Once you get to the higher level up classes, this might change, but for your freshman level classes, they will almost exclusively be based off of textbooks, and the lecture slides and the professor's lectures will reflect that. And what I mean by dependent on professor is that each professor has their own grading scale, their own policies on how you should write the work, on how you should submit the work, and just their own teaching style. So a lot of students refer to the website Rate My Professors when they're selecting classes. And this just shows past students' reviews of the professor, what they thought of the work, what they thought of the professor as themselves and their teaching methods. Then students could use this to make a decision on what professor they want to try to get for a class. And then the grade weights also depend on the class. And what this means is, personally for me in high school, how the grades worked was we had summative assignments, which were, I think, 75% of the grade, and then formatives, which were 25%. And then in college, this completely goes out the window. The professors set their own weights, how much homework is, how much tests are. Some classes don't even have tests. So I will go more in detail in this on the next slide. And college courses are much more self-guided and motivated. You're going to spend a lot more time on your own, reading the textbook, reviewing lecture slides, looking at any supplemental materials, just trying to better understand the material, because obviously it's much more in-depth, but you don't have as much time with the professor in lecture learning face-to-face instruction. So a lot of it is you learn on your own time, and then the professor helps you almost synthesize that information and help you better understand it. And then depending on the course, once again, like with everything, your relationship with the professor can be much more distant or much more close than your high school teachers. So for example, my intro to computer science class had, I think, 250 or 300 people in it. So there was like almost no chance of making a relationship with the professor. Every question, everything had to go through the TAs for the most part. But then for some of my classes that are project-based, the professor is much more heavily involved. So you end up talking to him more, getting his feedback and input. So this just depends on class to class, how involved the professor will be with you personally. Okay, so just to showcase how vastly different course weights can be, these are just 3 different classes I have. The first one on the very left is a CS class that is for Game Boy development that I'm doing right now. So as you can see, we don't even have any homework. I mean, not homeworks. We don't have any exams. We are only graded based off our homework. Oh wait, I'm sorry. I'm talking about the middle window. We have no exams. The grade is completely determined based off lecture quizzes, labs, homework, and the final project. The one on the left is another CS class, which is a project-based class, which does have exams. The exams count for about 84%. Oh wait, once again, I apologize. This is not a project-based class. This is just a regular lecture-based class. Exams are 60%. The final exam is 24%. So the vast majority of this class is based off exams. Almost 84% is based off tests, which is kind of daunting, but the teachers are really helpful, and there is oftentimes a curve for these type of courses. And then on the very right, this is another traditional type of grading scale where we have quizzes, homework, and 4 exams, which is pretty straightforward. Another thing I wanted to add is this grading scale on the bottom. Right here, it says that A is a 90 to 100, a B is 80 to 89.99. So a lot of courses in college, they do not round up. So for me in high school, if we had an 89.5 or a higher, they always rounded up. It is not the case in college, but I do want to say it depends from course to course, like with everything. My health class last semester, for whatever reason, counted an 87 and up as an A. So once again, just refer to your course syllabus for all this information when you get your courses next year.
So something that's really important while you're in college is having a good relationship with your college counselor and being able to work with them to figure out your schedule, what your 4-year plan is going to look like, how to incorporate other opportunities into just taking classes, because college is a lot more than that. Like how Shri was saying, like you don't have classes for the same amount of time each day as you do in high school. So there's more time for you to engage on campus, to maybe work a job, depending on what you want to focus on while you're in college. So when you do meet with your college counselor, have a list of questions or points to discuss ready so that you kind of have an idea of what exactly you want to focus on and what information you want to get from them. I would say don't really feel pressured to have everything figured out. I think a lot of times people go into these meetings thinking that they have to know exactly what they want to do when they get out of college and kind of they have to build backwards to see what they need to be doing right now. But that's not necessarily the case. Really just have a couple of goals ready that you can kind of base your questions off of and focus off of. And with that, your counselor will be able to go in and based on the experience they've had with past students, give you advice on things that you could be doing to kind of meet those goals. But one piece of advice to keep in mind is the way that a counselor says something is not necessarily the only way to do something. So for example, if they say, oh, you need to take this specific class, or like you need to take these 3 classes, but like that might not necessarily be the case. And they do have a lot of students, so sometimes that gets lost in translation. So definitely be sure to do your own research. I think college counselors and the advice they give is a good starting point. But even after that, there should be a good amount of research that you're doing on your own to figure out what classes you're taking, what paths you're going on, and what exactly is going to be best for you in the future and in the present. Keep an open mind while you're talking to your counselor. You want to kind of see their input and maybe base some of your decisions off of it, but don't consider them the the final say. You should be able to sort of work through all the information you have along with their advice to move forward with what you want to do. So an example of a few questions that you might want to get ready to ask your college counselor would be the following. So each university has very specific differences within each major. So for example, the business school at Tech operates very differently than the business school at UGA works. And the requirements or even what you learn within each major may differ greatly between each school. So talk to your counselor about specific variations of the major within the university. So one thing that Tech has, for example, for business majors, or really a lot of our majors, is a concentration aspect where you have your main core classes for your major, and then you can choose a concentration based on what you want to focus on. So perhaps opportunities like those or opportunities to work in more research-based organizations through your major are definitely something you want to discuss with your college counselor. I think something that's really helpful, especially if you're not entirely sure about what major you want or what minor you want or what concentration you want to have, is to build out a 4-year plan, especially if you feel pretty strict about the amount of time you need to graduate within. For a lot of people, even financially, they want to like get out as early as possible or just to move on and start working. So make sure that you build out a 4-year plan with your counselor, because they'll have all the requirements for your major set, and then you'll be able to discuss how you're going to go through all those classes, and you can plan out when you're going to take them, because some classes are only offered in certain semesters, or you want to make sure you take specific classes, especially the harder ones with the best professor available. So you'll be able to work through that. I think an amazing opportunity in college is being able to study abroad. I'm actually planning on studying abroad this upcoming summer. And when you're looking at your 4-year plan, I think it would be really great to block out time for study abroad, internships, co-op opportunities. And if you kind of have the semester set aside, then you'll have a better idea of what you need to accomplish during the semesters where you're just taking classes on campus, which is a really great experience as well. Next, one thing a lot of students look at when they are applying to colleges is the difficulty of changing your major at the specific university. A lot of the times it's easier when you're a freshman, and then as you continue to take classes, it gets more and more difficult to change your major. So you want to make sure that you have the information ready in case that you find yourself in a situation where you think you need to change your major. Personally, I came to Tech as a computer engineering major, and my fall of my freshman year, I decided to switch to industrial engineering. And for me, the process wasn't difficult, especially because it was still within my first year. But you want to make sure that you have the information ready in order to kind of make that decision. And then finally, engagement on campus. There's definitely a lot of ways to get involved in different communities at the university that you go to, whether that is in the form of joining some sort of a team, whether it's a sports team or some sort of academic team. And then even clubs, there's a lot of consulting opportunities or clubs for every major that can be found at a lot of schools. Different organizations, either based on your major, based on non-academic topics, based on community service projects. So you want to see what exactly you're interested in spending your time on outside of classes. So as you saw Shree's schedule, let's say on Friday, he says, well, I have like my entire afternoon open. Let me see if there's an organization that aligns with what I want to do. And if I can sort of participate on that when I have time. So you definitely want to look into that as well. So something that's really important, and I'm sure like some of you might feel that the information that we've given so far is very far-reaching, and it's a lot. The transition from high school to college is different for everyone, but a lot of the times there's a lot of things that are really different. Being away from home, kind of having this new structure to your life. But something that's definitely important is to see how you can manage the stress that comes with it, and to realize that that stress is managed differently for everyone. So everyone's facing their unique challenges. For me, my freshman year was during the pandemic entirely. So my entire first year was virtual. I actually only came on campus my second semester. So all of those changes prove to make the transition more or less difficult depending on the person. But you want to make sure that you're keeping yourself accountable to your own needs, to keep your body and mind healthy, and to kind of understand what you need to be doing in order for you to keep up with yourself. Understand what works for you. What works for you might not be for what works for everyone else. Some people get away with not sleeping as much, or kind of having longer hours outside of their dorm, or spending more time with people, but definitely find a good balance. Something that I've seen myself and a lot of my friends go through is not being able to find that balance soon enough, and seeing how that kind of derails what you're doing. And within that same aspect, don't compare yourself to your peers, either academically or otherwise. Perhaps you have a friend with a higher GPA, or you see them doing better on a daily basis with making more social interactions, or maybe getting a job or an internship. Don't compare yourself. Kind of focus on what goals you want to reach, and focus on reaching those. One thing that I would say is very helpful is to find a mentor or just an older student who goes to your university. A lot of universities provide these sort of organizations where you can find a mentor, either in your major or not, to provide guidance in something maybe as simple as registering for classes or joining organizations, or if you're having some other problems in your own personal life, I think they're definitely a good resource to talk to. And they've gone through it maybe just a year or two before you, so they definitely have some firsthand experience. And so one thing we can do is just go around, and the three of us, panel members, can just talk about what we do to manage our stress. So personally for me, it's like smaller things. If I feel overwhelmed by all of the schoolwork I have, or out of school sort of commitments, just like talking to my friends or relaxing for an evening. I really like cooking, so that's something that sort of calms me down and gives me food for the next day. But just kind of taking a moment to unwind and spend some time for myself is definitely something that helps me. Vivon, do you want to go next?
Yeah, for sure. So, like for me personally, I'm very big on yoga and meditation. Excuse my throat. But I do that a lot when I know I need to like get a break from everything. And I also make it a very important point to hit the gym too, because like I have a best friend that I'll go with, and like it's always a good feeling like ending the day, like finishing up all our work and then hitting the gym together, because we're like not only using that time to like improve ourselves, but it's like a great time for us to like finally talk about like other things besides like school and stuff. So those are two very big things for me. I would like really recommend you guys just incorporate that now, because it can become very difficult to pay attention to your health in college sometimes, like whether it's just like eating all the new food in the dining hall or just like running between your classes. Like it can get really time consuming to pay attention to your health with the midst of everything that's new that's going on. So I definitely like recommend like trying that out.
Yeah, and some things that do stress me out is one bad habit I do have is just the fact that I stress way too much over my grades still. I do think it's important to try to get an A if you put in the effort, but it's not the end of the world if you don't get an A, and anyone in college will tell you that. Like so many people in high school, including me, we're used to getting straight A's. So if you do get a B, it's almost like a culture shock, but don't worry, it's not the end of the world. But that being said, when I do get overwhelmed with schoolwork or just when I get overwhelmed with like a test coming up or whatever, I do study a good amount, but then I do take short breaks in between. Maybe like, so what I do is I have my own system where I study for maybe 45 minutes or an hour, and then I take a break for like 15 minutes or half an hour, just depending on however long I feel I should take at the time. And I just spend that time, I take a walk or I watch some YouTube or I spend some time playing a video game, and then I get back to work, and it's almost like this for a few hours. And I usually do this around exam time because I feel like when I study straight for a long time, I don't really retain the information that well. I just end up forgetting stuff later on. So I feel like this is a good cycle just to like help stimulate my mind. And it's just personally what I do to relieve stress, especially around exam times. And once again, this is also extremely subjective. Uh, a lot of uh, colleges require a health class, and the health class goes much more in depth on various ways of stress management that are tailored towards you. It can be relieving physical stress, mental stress, emotional stress, just depending on what type of stress you're going through. Just know that there are various healthy coping mechanisms.
Okay, so now we're gonna have our Q&A based on these topics. If you're in this call and like have any questions, you can enter them into the chat. But just to get us started, I'm gonna start with the questions that we got ahead of time. And out of the three panelists, whichever one wants to answer first, you can. So first, what does the process of registering for classes look like?
I can go ahead. So it's important to know that this is going to vary by university, but the process for registering for classes is first understanding what classes you want to take. So it's important to sit down with your counselor and like make that plan out. Like I'm going to take these 5 classes or these 6 classes, and also having a couple of backups that like if these classes aren't available, what classes am I going to take? Because if you do end up going to a large university, there is a chance that the class you want to get into is not going to be there at a certain point in time, especially if you're a freshman or a sophomore, because the juniors and seniors get a lot more time and space for their classes. Freshmen and sophomore are definitely going to have like earlier classes or classes like weird times you wouldn't expect because simply of the fact that there's just so many new people on campus that they're trying to like accommodate for. So that's important. And you're generally going to have a portal that you're going to log into, whether this is given to you by an email or this is something that you have to find yourself online. It's important to give yourself a couple like days of time before that, before you actually log in to schedule your classes, because you want to stay on top of everything. And that's how I would say to go about it. Always have a plan when it comes to scheduling your classes.
Okay, thank you. The next one is, what are the benefits of participating in an honors college?
So I can talk to this a little bit. I think honors colleges are very different from university to university. Some colleges have it more incentive, like the classes are a little different. Um, some universities kind of give preference for registration or housing. The way it works at Tech, I believe, is that we have living learning communities, and the honors college is one of those. So in first year, everyone who is part of that honors program would live together in one building, and they kind of have some activities that are exclusive to those um, members. But I definitely think that honors colleges are not necessarily the only path to take, even if you're qualified for them. A lot of the times, I think some of those communities where people are sort of like everyone's living in the same building are geared towards maybe out of state students or international students who don't have as many social connections when they come into college, and it's another opportunity to gain those. I do think it's something to look into, see what your personal preferences are for how you want your experience to be, and definitely base your decision off of that.
All right, and then our next one is actually pretty related to this, but it's, what is a living learning community?
I can talk about this one. Basically, a living learning community, it's basically a first year community where people can live in the same building, and it's usually united by a common theme. So I'm actually in an LLC this year. I'm a first year, and the one I'm in at Georgia Tech is called Grand Challenges. Basically, in this LLC, we have two different dorm buildings that we can stay in. And then we all share one common class called the Grand Challenges class. And in that class, it's basically a team project-based class where we can come up with any project and then we work on implementing a solution. And then the professor and the assistants are there to help us find resources and help us formulate that solution. So I think that's pretty cool. So one benefit of LLCs is I do personally think the community, like the dorm community, is closer than non-LLC dorms. Like for example, my friends who stay in one of the bigger dorms at Georgia Tech barely know any of the people on their floor. Well, I personally know almost everybody in the building just due to having done several things with them, like going on retreats, actually attending the Grand Challenges class, and just doing various other activities with those people. So I think it's definitely helpful for making stronger connections and easily meeting new friends with like-minded interests.
Okay, this one is taking a little bit of a different turn, but it's, what are some things you might have to do over the summer before your freshman year of college?
So I can go ahead and answer this one. A couple things that you might have to do before you go to college in the first place is, one, definitely figure out what all you're gonna need for your housing, especially if you're an out of state and it's, oh my god, I can't talk, an out of state student like myself. So you got to figure out how you're gonna get up to your college, because so I definitely had to drive up here because of the stuff I was going to take. It's also very important to communicate with your roommate on what all of the things you are going to need in a dorm, because this is going to be, for a lot of people, this is the first time they're going to be living by themselves for such a long period of time. Um, over the summer, there also might be a couple things like specified to your major, or like any early programs you could possibly get into. So definitely communicate with the college based on that. For example, one of my friends, he was in another LLC at Ohio State called Business Scholars, and they had a complete a couple PowerPoint like presentations and some activities before they went to college itself. And just another general thing, this will also vary by university. You might be given like a set of tasks to complete. So I had to do a, a training for diversity before I went to Ohio State. So that was something that did take a little bit of time. So yeah, I think it does vary by university to university, but you will be given separate tasks. You might have to do different forms of training. It's just good to like I say like what I did is like the first 2 weeks of my summer, I try to knock out as much of the stuff as I could just so I could just enjoy the rest of my summer because it's not very time consuming per se. So that's what I would really say. Just try and knock it out in the beginning of your summer.
Yeah, I would add that with the required thing, like the required tasks that Vivon mentioned, you usually will get an email sometime in the summer about anything that might be required. And usually for the new student orientations that colleges have, that's when they would go over this type of stuff too. So for example, at Georgia Tech over the summer, I think we had to do two different online courses. We had to do one on being responsible with alcohol and one with what's it called, sexual assault prevention. So it just depends on the college. You might get courses to do over the summer for stuff like that. You might not. Another thing I want that's important to get sorted out is just the financial situation, how you plan on paying for college. Just plan out the various expenses. If you need to take out financial aid loans or figure that out, summer is the time to finalize that.
Okay, so now we have a couple live questions.
Yeah, can I
One
just
of
add
them.
one more thing? I
Oh
just
yeah,
remember I want
sorry. Go ahead.
to yeah. Definitely try and apply to scholarships over the summer because you do not know how much time you're going to get during the school year. Whether this is scholarships provided by the university or anything you find outside the university, definitely apply to scholarships. It's also like I don't know if all universities allow this, but it definitely, from my experience, it's a great time to also talk to your counselor about scholarships or like talk to your counselor like early so that you can try and get ahead. Because if there's a couple like extra things that you do on your own time that you can knock out before you get to college, one, not only will the first week just be that much more enjoyable, but two, like you're gonna feel a lot more comfortable on campus. So those are just two things I wanted to add really quickly.
Okay, thank you. Now we have a couple that have been asked in the chat. So one person is asking, do you know any websites to help me decide my major?
There is a career clusters website that I remember doing in high school that was pretty helpful for me personally. I cannot remember exactly what the name of it was, but I just remember it was almost like a really long survey you did with lots of different occupation-based questions. And at the end, it would just show your aptitude for various different fields. And I mean, obviously that wasn't the deciding factor in telling me I wanted to do computer science, but it almost kind of like validated my own thinking, saying, I think I'm good at this, maybe I should do this. But other than that, I will take in the meantime, I will look for that and find it and send it. But other than that, I think, um, yeah, just based on what courses you've done in high school, what you seem to enjoy, you can definitely start forming an opinion early on. But just remember, um, the intro year of college, it's almost like a year of discovery. You can take lots of different classes, lots of different electives, find out what subject you're really into. And so if you're not completely decided on your major, that's completely fine. Um, you have time to decide that. And then the first year yeah, you can honestly experiment. If you end up wasting a lot of classes, if it's just your first year, it's honestly not that big of a deal. You can still graduate on time in 4 years for the most part. So, but yeah, I will look for that website I just talked about.
And then I think another question we got in the chat was asking about like dorm living versus apartment living, and if you guys have any opinions on which one is better, which this probably varies from college to college. So
Yeah, so I lived in, well, I was home for my first semester, but I lived in a dorm my second semester. It was a little different for me because usually you have two people living in a dorm. Um, but because of COVID, they had it so that everyone who came spring semester would have the entire dorm to themselves. So I definitely would say it was a little easier in that way because I was able to have my own space. Um, Something you want to look into while you're looking after you choose your college is sort of what on-campus housing you'd be interested in living in and also what's available to you. Some colleges restrict their apartments only to upperclassmen. I know at Georgia Tech, most freshmen choose to live on campus and live in the dorms. I know there are some people who chose not to live on campus their freshman year, and I don't think tech necessarily restricts you from living off campus. I would recommend staying in dorms your freshman year and then staying in on-campus housing in terms of apartments after that, maybe until your third or fourth year, because I definitely think living on campus gives you a better opportunity to kind of interact with your community, meet new people, and you're not like as isolated as you would be if you were living off campus. I also think living on campus makes it easier to sort of get up and maybe just go to your library or go to other buildings or even your classes during the day. So I definitely recommend staying on campus, especially for first year.
Thank you. I think another one is, what is the best time to look into college dorms? So I guess that's kind of like, when should you apply for housing?
I think this
I mean,
varies.
yeah, you
Oh,
go
go.
ahead.
All right. Just based on my experience, the time to choose housing was, I think, early summer around May, June. But it went on until July. But basically, I chose, I kind of did it the other way around. I got put into Howell because I chose the Grant Challenges LLC. But usually, if people aren't in an LLC, you choose the dorm. So for the most part, if you're in a two-person dorm, they are similar for the most in the most part, freshman dorms, at least for in terms of square feet, the dimensions, the shape of the room. It's mostly the same. So I would look more into uh if you're in state, I would honestly look into what your friends are doing. What else? You could look at the floor plans, and then you could also look at the location on campus. So if you want to be closer to the gym, that might be something you factor in. If you want to be closer to the classroom buildings, that's something you might want to look at. So each of the dorms, at Georgia Tech at least, each of the dorms has their own website with like floor plans, almost like 3D interior pictures, showcases what's on each floor, if there's like lounges, kitchens. So I would do that with each of the dorms that you're interested in. And then I think for Georgia Tech, it was as simple as just selecting in a drop down which one you wanted and then hoping there were available rooms that you could get there. And then I'm not sure how this is at other colleges. It might be similar, but that's just my experience with selecting a dorm.
Yeah, I'd say you definitely want to like to make your decisions as soon as possible. I definitely think like if you sort of accept admission to a university earlier on, then your housing slides earlier. I know for tech, like if you sign in January, then later on you'd get preference for housing. And also once that housing application opens for you, you definitely want to do it right away. I think we had time slots to choose um, our housing rooms. Um, so you definitely want to like keep up with that. Keep checking your emails, your notifications to make sure that you have that information and that you're able to do everything on time.
Okay, and then another question we have is, in what areas of my academic career should I take advice from my advisor?
I think your advisor is a good starting point, but not the end all be all. Um, Whether it's about taking classes, I think if you want to change your major, then your advisor is definitely someone to talk to because they can give you the full run through of what exactly you need to do in order to achieve that. I think it depends on your counselor, but definitely be cautious about sort of taking their advice as what's true, like what exactly you have to do. Definitely do your own research and kind of make your own decisions along with that. But they're definitely a great resource to speak to, especially during your first year.
Yeah, I would add that college counselors are also really good for talking to for help with time management or stress management. Specifically, they can help you develop better study habits, transition into college better, or if you're just having any personal issues, either they can help you or they can point to you to somebody who is qualified and is able to help you out. So they're a good starting point to access many resources.
All right, I think that's all of our questions. So thank you guys for coming. Just a bit of information about like what's coming up about outside of College Insights. We are going to have a 4th episode that's likely going to be focused on choosing a college major and minor, and this will probably be towards the end of this school year. There are also some links in the chat for a form to join Milton VIBA Club if you are a Milton High School student who is interested. As far as what we have coming up in VIBA Youth, we are about to conduct a school supply drive, and all the items are going to be donated to the Love T. Nolan Elementary School in South Fulton, Georgia. And you can follow VIBA Atlanta on social media for more information on how you can donate. And then there also is going to be another form in the chat that's going to give us just some feedback about what you thought about the webinar. So again, thank you all for coming, and thank you to our panelists for that great information. It was definitely very helpful to me as a as a high school senior who's about to go through all of this. So.
Awesome. Thank you, Dia.
All right, thanks guys. See you.